Great to see you here again. In this new series of videos, we're going to talk about resources, budgets, and we're also looking at some application in Project Libre. First of all, I want to talk about project management and resources. What are resources and how we can use resources? So first of all, we talk about human resources. Human resources refers to the people working on activities, manipulating equipment, and using materials. So basically, resources before in the PMBOK, they only spoke about human resources. Now they speak about resources in general because there are different types of resources that we can use. Now, people are very important for projects and we need them to complete the tasks they have been allocated to. We still have a lot of people working on projects. They may be manipulating tools and equipment and computers, but there are still the people who are there to work on it. Now, like I said, people will work with equipment and they will use materials. So when you are building something, you may need to use some screwdrivers, some equipment. You may need a computer and so on. So people are dealing with these elements and they're also very important for the project. Now, in order to work on a project or to complete certain tasks, people need specific qualifications. For example, if you want to fly an airplane, you have to have a pilot license, and there are different levels. When you work on Cisco routers, you may need a certain level of Cisco certification. And when you're a project manager or when you're working with projects, you may need to have specific certification, for example, a PMP certification, a CAPM certification, a risk management certification, and so on. Like I said before, a pilot needs an airplane. That's necessary. The pilot cannot fly alone. So basically, the pilot will use the equipment of an airplane to fly from A to B. A mason will use bricks and some equipment. So basically there are bricks, there is the mortar, and they will use some materials to work with those bricks and the mortar. We also have material resources. Like I said, we may use some materials. We can also call them consumables. When we are bricklaying, we need the mortar, we need the bricks, and we also have to look at the quantity and the quality of the materials that we need. They depend on the nature of the activity that we want to finish. Now we look at consumables typically. We look at bricks, lubricants, petrol, steel, paper, but they can also be other things like, for example, hard disks for computer and so on. The quantity of the materials depends on the work to be completed. It's also like the number of bricks to complete the wall. When we look at equipment relates to tools that are necessary to complete the work. And the type of equipment depends on the type of work that we have to complete. The equipment has to be adjusted to the work that we do. If you want to make a device with a certain precision, the material or the equipment that we're using has to be able to provide that precision. If it cannot provide the precision, then there may be a problem. Let's look at some equipment here. An airplane, which has to be operated by a certified pilot, a computer for programming, planning, and other administrative work, machines and wrenches and screwdrivers to build special deliverables, and elements like that. When we look at resources, we also have to look deeper into the financial aspects of the resources. When we look at human resources, people can be paid per hour, per day, per month, and their rate depends on the qualifications and perhaps some other parameters like the environment where you're working. If you're working in a healthy environment, your pay may be lower than when you're working in a risky environment, so there are different elements to consider here. It's also very important to see what kind of level of qualifications that you have. Material resources or consumables We typically count them per unit, like kilograms, meters, cubic meters, square meters, and other measures. We look, for example, at the materials for building a road. I'm using the European units, or the Canadian also, they're using that also, but in some countries, instead of kilograms, we can look at pounds, yards, acres, and so on. So there are different units that can be used depending on the region where you're from. Equipment is typically counted per usage. For example, an airplane has a specific cost per flight hour. You may rent some device for a certain cost per day. Now, when we look at the resources in general, when we look at certain elements, we have to see that the quality or the level that we are using, for example, when we look at people, when we use people who are overqualified to do a specific job, we may pay too much. The same thing when we look at materials or consumables, we may have differences in quality or in grade that we are using in order to have a better solution. If we use a better oil or things like that, or some additives, they may be necessary or they may not be necessary. Here we can have a look a little bit at what we called before gold plating. The same thing with equipment. We have to see if the equipment is suitable for the work we're going to do. It has to be able to provide you with the results that you need. But when you're using equipment that is, let's say, too good, too specialized, it may also, or it will have an effect on the total cost of the project. When we look at in resources in software, typically project management software provides many possibilities to plan and budget, and also to allocate resources to the different activities. We will look into an example when we look at Project Libre. It's easy to add the resources there, but other software also provides this element, and it will help us to look deeper into the allocation of resources. We can have human resources in the program, but also material resources and equipment. We can have different labels in the program, and the program will consider them or will use them and allocate them to the activities and calculate the cost depending on the specifications. Now, like I said, human resources, we can put there different elements. Typically, when you look at the programs, they are given per hour as a cost per hour, and you can also have additional cost because you are working in overtime and in risky environments. There are different possibilities that you can use. And materials, typically they're defined as a fixed cost when you look at them, but it can be different depending on the equipment and the programs that you are using. So that's what I wanted to say as an introduction about resources in general. And of course, before finishing, don't forget to click on the subscribe button, click on the bell button, and every time YouTube has a new video, whenever we have a new video, not YouTube, but YouTube will inform you about it. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.